and you hear of a story that seems absolutely disgusting, yeah, you're building it off of what you're hearing, and then you form an opinion. And I think that could be whether it's a story or whether it's fact, whether it's scientific fact, right?
Sure.
I drink enough beer, I'm going to get drunk. That's fact.
Easy equation,
right?
Right.
I mean, that's just the way it is. Nobody's arguing with that. You might be able to drink more or less or whatever, but I think when emotion gets involved, of that's disgusting, or what, like what Nick said, why in the world would this go on when we have all these world leaders or supposed world leaders that, how did they not have knowledge of this, right? And now all this stuff goes down, and it's just kind of weird, and you're like, whoa, what just happened? And what is really happening? It makes you want to dig deeper and question what is going on around us, and then it makes you question other things. Like,
well, I said, if you listen a little bit to, like, you watch that Running with the Devil, right?
Yeah.
Like that he, McAfee or whatever, he's a crazy dude too or whatever, but he was all about that, like saying they're after me, I'm gonna, they're gonna try to kill me. Then he gets arrested, and they end up, they said he's like, he had a tattoo that said, I didn't kill myself.
Right.
And then they said he killed himself. Then you have like the I can't think of the other one.
Well, the one guy we talked about a couple weeks ago, the Romanian guy, or
Andrew Tate.
Yeah, well, I mean, he even said
first they silence you, and then
this is what's going to happen, right? And so there are definitely forces out there that they don't want us to see, feel, and more
Snowden.
It seems we can see and feel them, right?
That Snowden or whatever, who was the whistleblower on like the spying or whatever from the NSA and all that stuff. Now he's like been on the run or whatever, but like he's big into all the stuff that they keep from us and hide from us and do.
Yeah. And clearly, I mean, you guys brought it up with the Ohio thing. Like, that still is not mainstream news.
I mean, they talk about it on.
Well, yeah, but it's not like it should be.
No.
You know what I mean? Or not like it should have been when it happened.
I have seen commentary that is likening that train derailment and crash in Ohio to the worst environmental disaster the U.S. has ever had.
Like that nuclear outbreak in PA. What was that? What was that called? They did that.
Where at?
3 Mile Island deal?
Yes.
Yeah.
What the heck was that called?
In another country, or
no? It was here. It was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. People are
stuff happens in Pennsylvania.
Whether it is or is not on that scale of magnitude of like Chernobyl, of what happened in Ohio, for somebody to make that jump and make that correlation.
Yeah, that it's on that scale.
Somebody has connected those dots, and the fact that it's not like our Secretary of Transportation is just like low play in this thing.
There's a
like
reason.
Nobody sees a huge problem in this thing. Look,
right?
Okay. There's people on the left, people on the right, but at some point, people need to say, "Hold on a second. We're talking about human beings in this country.
We're all
right?
people.
What's down
none
river?
of that left and right is
exactly.
Left and right is not going to matter if none of us are here anymore. You know what I mean? Like if we're
it's not worth fighting over that.
Yeah, if we've gotten into this race to the bottom and none of us can stop and say, "Wait a minute. This person that I liked last week, I'm supposed to not like anymore because I heard that they like something I don't."
Yeah.
Oh, stop. Come on now. I think we've sold out the complexity in the great part about other people because you don't align with what I think on 100% of what I think.
Yeah.
How fucking shitty is that? Now you're talking about I don't like you because I heard one thing that you said.
I know, and I think it's more and more. I think we hit on this a little bit before. It's more and more, but that happens. But I still think the majority of people just, still want to connect with people regardless.
Yeah,
but it is more prevalent.
Do you think there's like
any
this,
doubt about that?
You think there's like this blanket or the shadow that's cast on like, yeah, I want to believe, and I think everyone sitting at this table wants to believe that everyone, when the lights go out and tough times are on all of us, we're going to band together. You know, we're going to put all of our differences aside and say, we're more alike than we are different. We're going to survive. I'm going to help you out. You're going to help me out. At some point when we're all back on our feet, we can get back to hating each other for bullshit. But right now is the time where we all got to help. I think everyone here feels like, okay, that's the point. But there's some people that they'll die on that sword. Like, I don't like you. I'll never like you. I don't care what angle you're coming at me with what you like. I don't want to hear it. Right? And they're
why do you think that is?
I myself am not a person who can really like. I mean, there's no amount of politics or anything that. I mean, I don't dislike probably people I should dislike. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, it's hard for me, whatever their beliefs are. If I don't agree politically, I would rather. I don't want to say debate, but I would rather them ask me like, why do you think the way you do? Sure. And I would say, why do you? Sure. But in terms of like liking them or disliking them, like there's people that I should probably hate for wrongdoings they've done. You know what I mean? And I really find it hard to dislike anybody really for anything. So like it'd be really hard politically to just like be like, okay, you're a Democrat, I hate you. You know what I mean? Right. It just doesn't happen for me.
I think that might be one of the toughest questions, Todd. Like when you ask somebody, why do you not like this person? That might be the toughest question to answer. Because a lot of the time you're going to get, and then that person's going to take a minute to figure out why they don't like somebody. Well, if you're so adamant about why you don't like somebody, you should be able to just come right off the cuff with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And most of them can't. Most people can't. I think most people actually seek community, and they find it politically somehow, in whether it's on the fringes, which means they rally with the people that are their community is people that dislike that root against other people and against other values, and I don't think most people are that way, but that's what the media portrays. So that's what people think they need to be. So when you if you feel like you're alone, you can go join a movement that you can feels like you're a part of something.
If you break it
whether
down,
it's positive or negative, you just believe in it because it moves you.
I mean, if you break it down to like a rudimentary form of, if you don't agree with me, you're a danger to my thought process, the evolution and livelihood of who I am. Right?
Yeah.
So if I say yes and you say no, I'm immediately going to go to, well, if you say no to what I say yes to, you're going to stop the progression of me. Right?
I think especially when somebody's already in a fragile state and then they feel like now I've got traction in something, then yeah, I think it's harder. They're going to fight harder. They're going to put up walls around that a lot harder than somebody who's just, I think like we are. We're all pretty open-minded. We could have anybody sit across the table from us, discuss, disagree. I mean, we've disagreed just about every podcast. We might not have the same opinions on things.
Sure.
But we just talk and we form opinions and we respect each other. And I don't know. I think this day and age, politically, in the media has moved people to, you have to be aligned with something. So you might as well be aligned with this. And if you are, and somebody else isn't, just stay in your lane and be aligned with that. And if they're outside of those guardrails, protect those guardrails instead of being open-minded and just respectful of, you know what? For me, this works well, and we're all still heading in a positive direction. Okay, cool. Let's not judge each other.
The biggest issue, though, I think,
respect each other.
Which is like, I don't run around saying I'm a conservative or I'm a Republican, because I don't even think I am.
Right.
I would say if it's anything, it's more libertarian because I'm super liberal in most things, but like I don't line up much. It's just too far for me the other way. But I think when they started labeling people certain things, like if you're Republican or support Trump or whatever, you are racist, right? Like you know what I mean? And then they're saying, well, what about African Americans who support Trump? Well, they're just voting against their own interests.
Right.
What are you talking about? No, maybe they have values or whatever that lean farther this way that they're just going on, right?
And how dare you like step outside of what the structure is of what everyone thinks you should believe.
But I also have empathy for like when on the other side when there's people there saying for women's rights and all that stuff for like abortion and they believe in that and they think it's something that should be done, like I'm like, that's awesome. I mean, it's their belief and they want that. I mean, I don't think it is best on my end, but I think abortion in general is just a sad situation. I wouldn't want to be in that way, but I also it isn't a voting thing that affects me.
Right.
If I felt like voting for the Democratic person or whatever, abortion wouldn't even be a factor. I don't even care about that.
And you're still going to sit and break bread with somebody who firmly believes that it's the right thing to do.
It wouldn't make me think
And it's like,
anything.
hey, that's one thing in this world. And I'm not here to judge. And that's where my faith jumps right in. Is like, I'm not the one here to judge this.
No.
I'm here just to like love you and hopefully you can be a better person because of what I exude. And maybe you can pour into me when I need it. And that's just how the world should go around. It just
I think that
it just
something
doesn't.
that
And there is right and wrong. I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere, but for the most part, you know, you walk in somewhere and you see somebody and you say hi and you shake their hand and you look them in the eye and see how their day's doing. You see somebody in the grocery store and you ask them how their day's going. You know, you might be talking to somebody that is all they needed was somebody out of the blue to just say hi and take an interest in their day, and you're just, you know, to you it's making small talk.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I think what gets cast aside a lot is acceptance and an open heart. I think what goes hand in hand with that is a level of respect, right? So, like, I'm willing to, operate in life with an outreach hand. I'll help you. I'll always help you, regardless of your situation. I'll help, and I'll accept you for who you are. It doesn't mean that I subscribe to the same things that you subscribe to. But in kind with that offering, I'm expecting you to respect my position because I'm respecting your position, right? How you want to live your life, the decisions you want to make, like, as Todd's saying, as faith teaches you, accept other people, right? What other people decide to do does not decide what you want to accept or what you want to do, right? You can accept other people for their shortcomings, for their missteps in life, for their sins. Look, that's on them. Other people's sins aren't your sins, right? But in turn, with that whole thing is you need to respect the decisions I've made. Whether you think they're right or wrong, that's not a weight for you to impose on me, right? Sure. The life, the path I'm traveling through life is based on the decisions I've made and the intervention that I've received from, whether it be a higher spirit, whether it be loved ones, whatever, your context in life. But the simple fact that I'm respecting and accepting you for what you've done and where you're at in your life, that needs to be returned to me. Because I've had missteps in my life. I've made terrible decisions. I've strayed off of whatever path has been laid before me. That's fine. But what gets lost is, okay, I've been accepted and respected for what I've done, but I'm going to shit on what you've done because it's not the same as mine. That's wrong. And the system is broken. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, when we stop having, like, the discussions to try to, like, improve each other's beliefs, I think that was a big problem. You know what I mean? Like, when you can't, like, admit what you think, right? and your opinions, when you're afraid to have those discussions with other people to try to, I'm not saying you want to bring them to your side, but sometimes people have the wrong idea of things and they go down a path of like just being frustrated and mad with like the Amazons and the Googles and all this stuff. And they're like, why aren't they paying their fair share? Right. And it's like, well, have you ever considered the fact that like they're in growth mode? Like they don't have these taxable profits that you're talking about. They've actually added 25,000 jobs last year. They actually made 5 more facilities, right? So they're reinvesting into it so that at the end of the year, when they say, okay, what should you pay on your taxes for, right? They're like, well, there's a lot of expense here, right? Well, a lot of added things. So I'm just saying, like, a lot of people just think that there's this, like, top end. I mean, Todd knows he had a business, right? Like, if you are in the negative 50,000 for the year, how much taxes should you pay on negative 50,000?
I'd be willing to challenge you with back up a second. So who's to say somebody's wrong, right? I think you look back at the podcasts we've done and the conversations we've had, and I'd like to think I've stayed consistent, and all of us always stay, in my opinion, all of us always can stay consistent in our core mindsets and directions. You'll be able to look back at all the podcasts we've done, okay, and say, this is where Nick's coming from. This is kind of a structure of where he operates from. This is where Todd comes from. This is kind of his perspective on life. This is where Tony comes from. His kid's kind of perspective. I think that's what really rounds us out. There's a lot of things that we have in common, but there's some things that we're all over the place on, right? But we're willing to discuss all of them, right? If you take this down to a lower level of what's right and wrong, I think we all have this level of, okay, I feel like this is right. I feel like this is wrong. Now let's have a discussion about it. I'm not going to tear your idea up because for some reason you've formulated where you're at. Like you've made decisions that have brought you to where you are today. I don't know all the ins and outs of the decisions you've made. I know you pretty well. Otherwise we wouldn't be in this weird, obscure box having a podcast with each other. But, I'm inquisitive enough and I want to know my eagerness to understand both of you two as people trumps any kind of conflict I have with you. Of like, okay, I see there's people here that I think overall are 99.9% exactly like me. Now, there's going to be things, you can look back at these podcasts and see Nick and I, Todd and I, any of us, we might come to a head on it in an issue, and the conversation switches to okay, this is where I'm going to dig some heels in here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to push back because this is what I believe. And it's not I feel like when we have these discussions, it's not okay, this is a battle to establish dominance. It's look, I feel like this about this thing. I'm going to push hard. I'm going to push as much as I believe this idea. And either I'm going to see your waves crash over the wall here and you're going to change my idea, or the opposite's going to happen. I might impact your idea on this thing, right?
That's how it should be.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think overall that pushes us to maybe why we even started doing this is this very curious, inquisitive core that we have of selfishly, I'm going to become a better person by sitting down with a couple of my friends and having some hard discussions.
About UFOs and conspiracies.
Right.
And
Yeah. Look.
Moon landings.
Yeah.
Everything.
At the center, at the core of every one of these discussions we have, I think one of us, if not all of us, come out of here and be like, okay, I can respect that perspective. And I think we have a little bit more enlightened view of strangers we run into on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, it's it's blanketed, it's camouflaged under the idea of, hey, did you see those weird, shiny things in the sky tonight? Okay. But ultimately, it's just, hey, I want to know some people, like, all three of us invested time in each other, more than, let's say, any stranger that we've come across. I'm going to dig into you guys on a selfish level to find out more about myself.
Makes sense.
With respectable sounding boards of saying, hey, like, I'm going to say some crazy shit tonight, guys. I know you guys are my friends, so you're going to check me and be like, that's bullshit. Or, hey, you're talking out of your ass. Or we're going to have this conversation and we're going to push this thing forward and maybe we're all going to grow.
True. I do find sometimes that and I think that we'll get to that point where we talk about a lot of things hypothetically, and we should talk in them more a little bit. I feel like, and I do that. I'm so guilty of this. Where it's like, well, it could be, I could say, well, sometimes I'm like this, and sometimes I should just, hey, well, when I'm in this situation, I'm this way. I'm doing it right now. Like, and then we discuss it, and I think we get into it. Yes, sir. I think we get into it sometimes, and when we get on a topic, I think we go down a rabbit hole that's fun. And then sometimes we get into these hypotheticals and these the big body. Got that big body.
Finish it off with 16 ounces, son.
But either way, I think Tony hit it on the head. It's enlightening to hear perspective, and I don't know exactly how he just phrased it, but
when you left, that's kind of what I was a little bit talking about, though. I was thinking, like, that's the downside on the people disliking each other. Like, they need to talk more.
Yes.
Like, in these types of things. Because I'm not saying you want to take your friends who don't agree with you and, like, you don't need to convert them. But by having the dialogue and talking about the things, you can come to some agreement. In some ways, like I said, I think I've been misinformed and I'm believing something super strongly. And then I hear their reasons why they do. And it shifts me to having more empathy for their cause or what they're thinking. And like I said, I'm just thinking of my most recent, not argument, but debate with somebody. And I had mentioned to Tony, I was saying, like, they said their biggest thing as to why they were like hardcore, Democrat was just they hated the fact that, like, all these corporations or whatever get away with murder and they get away with not paying their fair share of taxes. And all I said to the person was, I just said, hey, like, Amazon's one of the largest employers in the world, right? They're in growth mode and they're growing. I'm like, they're reinvesting all over the country, right? So when it comes to the end of the year to pay taxes, there's probably not a lot of on the books of this taxable money that they would think, like, because when you're building buildings and you're growing in other cities and you're doing all this stuff, you're spending. And I was saying, you as a business owner would know.
You're spending.
But that was a conversation I had, and that person looked at me and they were like, oh. Like, they didn't know that.
Yeah, but look at how much they've grown the tax base by the people they employ. So
that's my point.
That's huge. Plus, listen, anybody who says that has to look at the fact that if they were in somebody's shoes where you could look at your business or look at your situation and go, I could pay less in taxes to the government who just, I mean, I don't care which side of the aisle they're on, they waste money that we give them.
Yeah, both.
I'm gonna pay less because guess who's way better at controlling my income and where it goes and how it gets used.
But you also
then
you hire more people though, right? So say you don't want to pay taxes, right? And you're like, well, should I have 2 or 3 people working at the gym, right? And I'm like, well, if I hire somebody else, it's less money maybe in my pocket or whatever. Maybe they grow the business and help us do some stuff, but I'm also then paying more. So then, you know what I mean?
Correct.
It's more off the top end. But
my point is anybody in the position to pay less in any sort of tax legally, you're going to try to do that.
You should.
People try to maximize their returns all the time. The same person that said that is probably trying to maximize their return. So they're doing it in their individual life, yet when a business does it, they're not paying their fair share. So it's an oxymoron, Nobody wants to pay the government as much money as anybody pays them. So the point being, though, is right. In business, you could pay less because there's not much left over because you're investing. That could be your thing, but now the tax base underneath of all your employees, take a look at that.
Well, so, they do that, so they end up like saying no. Then they always like want to direct the things at like, well, then Amazon's just a shitty place to work, and they don't treat their employees well, and so it's not good anyway. But in the end, the person was like thankful, and they're like, wow, I didn't know that. And they were like, these politicians don't give you context. They just stand behind the microphone and they say that Amazon needs to pay their fair share. And it's like, well, say more. Tell us more.
I feel like...
What does that mean?
I feel like...
Because they do.
Yeah. Way more than a lot of people.
Well, I mean, the top 10% pay 90% of the federal income tax. What I'm saying. I mean, it's crazy.
Years from now, we're gonna look back and be like, man, look at all these cavemen trying to figure this thing out. And the answer was right here. The most efficient model where everyone was like, okay, that seems fair. Like we finally got there, right? We pinballed on both sides, swung back and forth. Okay, look. This way it was fair for these people. This way it was fair for those. And we bounced back and forth until we finally got to the center of like, okay, this is agreeable by both. Yeah, in hindsight, we're going to look back and be like, we were burning villages to the ground trying to figure this one out when the answer was right there. Right? And that's just how we solve problems. Until we get to the answer, there's just going to be this array of answers, and nobody's gonna like it until we find the one. And then once we find the one, it's like, okay, well, yeah, duh, we were right there the whole time. We could have been there. Ultimately, we finally settled on this one answer. We're good, and then we move on to something else, right?
I don't think we ever get there in this type of thing.
I think we get there more often than we think. There's just so many problems to answer that it's like there's always something that we're always going to find a bone to chew on.
The issue is like with these types of things, I guess it's more of like when you have super productive people in society who work really hard and do stuff, they're doing it based on incentives, right? Like they do it because they want to provide and they want to do more stuff. And then if you just give people things or whatever and it disincentivizes them and everybody's equal, right? Like the competition goes away. And so I understand like people are like, I hate capitalism and I want socialism.
Innovation ends.
But it's like, you want to have competition. You want people to try to outdo people. You want people to innovate and do cool things. But again, that then harms other people because people leave them in the dust and they struggle because they don't have the capabilities of doing that for some reason. And capitalism like hurts them, right? And I get it. And so there's certain people that you have to do that, but you can't just sit around at home and play video games or whatever and expect to have as much as, what I mean, someone who's out working 90 hours a week.
I feel like you have different camps here though, right? You've got... So that model works with people who are competitive and people who subscribe to that model. Okay, yeah, we should all be that way. That's great. But if somebody doesn't see it that way and they're I think we should all just be staying at home playing video games.
Well, then they go work for somebody that they believe in. This is America.
That's fine. I mean, that's your perspective. But what I'm saying is you don't have a starting point that everyone is like, okay, we're coming from here. You have people that...
No, there's different starting points, 100%.
You have different, almost universes of thought. Of, okay, look, if we all got $10 a day and the cost of living was $7 a day, okay, I can spend $7, save $3, and everyone's happy. Well, yeah, that works for that group of people who are thinking that, but another group is saying, well, what if I'm working harder? Or what if you're not working as hard? Well, the other group, that doesn't compute to because they're not looking at it that way.
Well, someone says, I'll give you, you know what I mean, like a massage for your $10 that you got today. And they're like, that's a deal. And then I hoard yours. And I just am doing nice things. You don't have to necessarily like outwork or compete. You just have to be willing to have some of these like ground things.
What I'm saying is there's some groups that don't even look at it that way as a competition level or I'm going to amass wealth level. They just think, okay, look, I've got this many things. I'm going to spend this many of these things and I'm going to save some of these things. It's very simple to them. Some people, because look, it's way more complex than that. Like, I can take the things that I have, I can multiply them by investing and being smart. I can make sacrifices here where you're not making any sacrifices. And I can accrue more into my savings this way. Some people's brains and their life works that way. And that's fine. That's great for them. But you're talking about two different mindsets here. You're talking about some people that are like, okay, look, we should all be operating this way. This group of people thinks we should be operating that way. And now we have a huge conflict because this group says this group says that. And we're never going to see eye to eye because fundamentally we just look at things differently, right? There's a equality level that I look at things, and everybody should be operating this way. If everyone operated this way, everything would be fine. But other people are wired different, and they look as, wait a minute, you're being lazy with what your potential is in life. You could do way more. Okay, yeah, fair enough. There's way more bandwidth for this person. You could be doing more complex ins and outs, but you're not.
So let me ask you a question. If you have somebody if you describe somebody as passionate about something, is that person typically intriguing to you? Do they seem motivated to you?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it would be. Yeah, I mean, if you're
right?
it doesn't matter what you're passionate about, but passionate about something, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's going to lead to another question. Why? What is it? Why do you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, right. Something positive, let's just say. Okay? So, inherent in the definition of passion is suffering and sacrifice. You have to work. You have to be willing to suffer and sacrifice to be passionate about something. I mean, I heard this. Tim Tebow was on Ed Milet, and this is how he defined passion.
Yeah, I would say
it's
somebody
crazy
who's
to think
passionate
that,
has foregone something.
Okay. So my point is if this group who is like, hey, that person who's passionate over there about getting after being a masseuse or whatever it is to get themselves ahead, are you not willing to suffer and not willing to sacrifice to be better? And then you're just expecting?
I think so.
There's some people who would think that. That's the issue.
No, I agree. Right. But what I'm getting at is there are places in a capitalistic world for both people. It's fine for you to say, hey, I believe everybody should be in the middle. Well, okay, I want everybody to be right too. I've traveled to Africa. I've seen how the kid that I sponsored lives over there, and it's the poorest of the poor here, and he's the most joy-filled person I've ever met in my life. Well, there's something to that, right? And he's got passion. He's passionate. He's willing to suffer. But he wants to be better. If he didn't have that, there would be no attraction to that connection.
There's also too, you got to think about so there's freedom for people to have whatever view they want and do whatever they want.
Agreed.
But again, I think what Tony was saying is people aren't necessarily wired and they don't want to compete and they don't want to do stuff. And that's perfectly fine. I would just say that they can't complain and want to be given things for what, right? You don't, you want to have the newest, nicest car or something, right? But yet you're not willing to sacrifice anything for it. Somehow you want this, universal basic income to give it to you, which means other people doing things for you to get it. I'm perfectly fine with the person who doesn't want to be super productive. They're content with their life, living a transient life, and that's great. That's perfectly fine. I'm all for the freedom to choose what you want to do. I was just, not solving the problems of getting everybody in this right line when everybody does think a little different.
Well,
and
I totally agree with exactly what you just said. If you want to go chase waves and be the surfer, that's where I always go with that, and be happy and pour into other people. Be that. But that doesn't mean that you need to hate on somebody who is passionate about something and getting after it, and in a capitalistic world taking advantage of it, and maybe they're getting really wealthy, but they're doing it in the right way, and they're employing people.
Are you?
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people in that middle ground where they want that equality and they just want to bring everybody into the middle, and then now we're just all government drones who just have no shot to chase our passion.
Let me ask you this question: Are you willing to accept a personal loss for someone else's win?
100%.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're not going to be able to balance the scales for everyone. It's not.
Yeah, we
happen,
know that.
right? So whether it be as easy as saying, okay, you get $10 or I get $5, and that's considered even because you need $10 more than I need $10. Right? I need $5. You need $10. We have $15. You get 10, I get 5. I didn't get as much as you, but I needed $5 like you needed $10. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah.
Fair
it
enough.
Can be that way.
Fair enough. Are you willing to let's say what props that up is we both work the same amount. We both put in the same amount of effort.
But you spend more than I do, so you get more?
No. If you are in need of $10 to the same level that I'm in need of $5, and we work the same, is that fair to you?
Say that one more time.
Okay. We both work 40 hours a week.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, the value of $10 to me is equal to $5 to you. Now, there's somebody that's going to say, okay, you've worked 40 hours. Todd, you need $5, and that's here. Tony, you need $10, and that's here. So, Todd, you're going to get 5. Tony, you're going to get 10.
And we did the same exact job for 40 hours.
Yeah. But that equates the same level of happiness. Are you willing to accept that?
Well, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? If I only need the 5 and you need the 10, it doesn't.
Okay.
For me, I've already signed the dotted line saying I'm willing to accept this agreement, and I'm fine with it because I'm getting my needs met. Okay. Whether it's 5, and that happens a lot though for people who work same jobs, and that's just how it is.
Now let's change this equation a little bit, and now Todd, who only needs $5, works 40 hours, and Tony, who needs $10, has only worked 30 hours. Now, the input has changed, but the output is still the same. There's still $15 to be shed here. Now, Todd has worked 40 hours. He needs $5. Tony's only worked 30 hours. He needs $10. Now, the input of Tony has impacted Todd's happiness of $5. Nothing. Todd, you're still going to get $5. Tony, you're going to get $10.
I'm good.
This hypothetical is hard though, because if all of a sudden I'm watching you dip out to go to the beach or whatever 10 hours earlier in the, you know what I mean, compared to what I'm working, I just don't think that the happiness on that person is going to stick to the same.
This reflects onto the effort put into it, right? So that's exactly it. Like the effort in also has that skew of what are you doing with what makes you happy, right? So if $5 makes Todd happy, $10 makes Tony happy. Now, Tony's happy looks like 30 units of input and 10 units of partying. But Todd's input looks like 40 hours or 40 units of input and zero units of party, but everyone's needs are being met. Does that still balance the sheet?
It depends on who you are.
I think most people
this
need
to
evolve.
This is what I'm talking about.
I would say in the real world, that ain't gonna fly, for the most part.
It's not going to, because you were talking about there's multiple layers being added onto this, right? There's even Stevens being cast out there. Well, wait a minute. If I'm putting in 40 and I'm only getting 5, but my needs are being met, but I look over to my left and this person's doing 75% of the work I'm doing and getting twice as much as I'm getting. Well, if I got twice as much as what I'm getting, I could have 2 times as much as how much fun I'm having now.
That's how you'd naturally think.
Regardless of what I need is being met, that doesn't matter anymore. I'm looking to the left and I'm seeing this person doing 75% of the work and getting twice as much as I'm getting. This isn't fair anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. How often does that happen, though?
All the time. Every day.
Where somebody's getting paid twice as much for the same job?
It scales, right? So it's, no, dollar for dollar, no.
Right.
But value, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I agree
So
with that.
if you're going to get lost in the sauce of, I'm doing this much and this much should equal X, I think there's a third variable there, and it's the person that it relates to. Like if you're doing this much work and you're getting this much return on it, the third variable is that person, right? And I think this is where the left and right split, where the right would say, okay, you input X, you should get Y, right? Because everyone can input, they're in control of X on how much they put in. Every person is. I think everyone can agree on that. If you put in more effort, I think you should get more. But if you scale that with what you really need, and I think this is where the left goes wrong, is everyone should agree to, like, this is how much you need to survive, right? I think where the left gets it wrong is they look at, like, well, what you need to survive is based on who you are. I don't think so. I think there's a level where this is a survivable level. If you're going to put in, like, everyone should get that level. You're going to survive. You're not going to die. You're not going to worry about, like, I'm going to sleep.
At what position, though?
You mean?
Like, I don't believe my son should have a survivable level of income at 16 years old.
I would agree with that. Right. I think there would need to be an established, like,
he doesn't need a survivable level of income.
Well, because he's a dependent.
Correct.
You know, when they talk about universal basic income, it's kind of like what you're saying a little bit.
I think that's what we're getting to.
But so what's interesting to me and what I've always thought about this, right? So it's a way to basically print more money, get it into the hands of people, right? But because the majority, or I wouldn't say the majority, but like people don't have the foundation necessary to do what they need to, right? So all that is really is more money for the savvy, wealthy people to extract from people who have no foundation for money. Like it's an analogy or whatever of, like, if you had a millionaire on one hand and someone with nothing on the other hand, right, living their life, and you just swapped their bank accounts, right? The person who made $1 million themselves in the next 5 years becomes a millionaire again.
Is a millionaire.
I think
and the other person loses it because they don't.
I think you're simplifying and trying to push back what we're trying to work to here.
I agree.
So,
no,
if you have people. All right, I lost it.
Well, I'm just saying the needs and wants thing that you're saying, though, is I'm saying, like, if everybody was giving these
it's
needs
not
that you
and
need.
wants. That's
No,
not,
but I'm saying
what I'm saying.
I'm saying your basic, like, if you have what it takes to survive, I get that, right? The problem is that people who are super savvy will find ways to manipulate those people and start selling them things that are outside of their general basic needs, right? And they'll give, basically what happens.
They'll go, okay, this guy over here likes to spend money and he's got money. I'm going to create something that he's going to spend money on, and he'll probably make $2 million, not $1 million.
But what happens is, instead of paying for their basic needs, then I just think the money starts going to other stuff, right? Which is then making the rich people richer. And I think it's odd to, like, consider something like a universal basic income, because
you have fast forwarded, like, what I'm trying to build up to.
Well,
I'm trying to talk through.
It's like it was 10:07, so I was just, hey, we're on it. And
Yeah. I agree.
Fair enough.
But that's all. I had that in my head too, just thinking about the fact that like I've wondered about that. I thought it would be great because I would like to have, like, those basic needs met, right? Like, in a form of money coming to my bank account to pay for the food for the kids, all that stuff, right?
All I'm saying is we could have got there if we would have spent another 10 minutes talking through
I
this
think
thing.
you can get after it. I had something I didn't want to forget as well.
Fair enough.
And sometimes it's hard to.
That's how
it's
general
hard to,
discussion goes.
It's hard to get through the beard.
And I respect it.
I'm like.
But I think if the answer was easy, we would have already gotten there.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, there has been minds better than all three of ours put together that have sat down and have these discussions and haven't gotten there.
And I think one of the biggest points you said is people don't start at the same. We're not starting. People aren't running the race starting at the same starting point. There's people inside the stadium, right in the blocks. There's people in the stands. There's people in the tunnel. There's people in the next freaking city over that can't even start running the race till they get to the stadium. I mean, that's just unfortunately, that's just the way it is. How do you correct that? I think that's where culture shift happens, where you have to figure out who's going to make a decision. Somebody at some point has to make a decision to change a culture, and nobody can pick where they're born, right? And you can just make decisions within that environment to try to change it and move forward. And so I do think that it's a little, my situation's pretty fortunate. How I grew up. Middle class. My dad had a business. Things were that way. Not that I didn't work, not that I didn't work hard, not that I didn't deserve it. Nobody can tell me I didn't deserve where I got to and what I did. But my starting blocks were ahead of a lot of other people. I'm not disparaging that.
Sometimes that's not a head start, though.
It cannot be.
You stayed a hard worker. Sometimes that's not.
Correct.
Sometimes it's like you're taking the handout and you kind of like fall away from it. You know what I mean?
But I think when we talk about this, that's the variable that's really difficult because we don't start at the same point. We all want to get to the same end point, which is maybe this line, and then you can get above that wherever you want, but get to this certain point. And it's a longer run for some people, and that's what makes it difficult, and where you get varying opinions. And I'd love to gain perspective from somebody whose block started way back and made it, and say what did that take, and what were the hurdles, and what kind of things can be changed. And I think that's where the beauty of it comes in, because I would love to hear about that, because I'm all for that stuff and those programs to help people, put them in place to help them succeed and give people the opportunity to be successful, whatever that means, right?
I think that's where it gets lost on everybody is, okay, you have varying starting points. You made it. The finish line is not a uniform finish line.
Sure.
And I think that's where I think that's the downfall of a lot of people, right? I think that's where that term keeping up with the Joneses comes into place. Like, you might have busted your ass to get to phase 1.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might have been born into phase 1.
Yeah.
And now everyone's completion is phase 10.
Think about people who immigrated here out of nothing.
But you're talking about, okay, my I've made it is I have a roof over my head, and I don't have to look at the bill when I pick it up for everybody. Okay, fair enough. Now, that doesn't mean that that's associated with a hard number value, right? My house, the roof over my head could cost $100,000, could cost $1 million. That's inconsequential. I made it. But when you start looking at, okay, my roof over my head, which I'm happy with, was $100,000. I look over to my right, and the consensus is you've made it when you're at $1 million roof over your head. Well, now I failed. 10 minutes ago, I was happy, and I had made it. And now somebody else said, nah, you didn't make it. Well, do you have the fortitude enough to say, no, you're wrong, I did make it?
Well,
okay,
that's
is
what
that person going to shit on you and say, you didn't make it? Well, who are you to tell me I made it or not? My story is written and lived by this person. I made it. You can say I made it or didn't make it at all, but guess what? You're not part of this story, right? I decided I made it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of. I mean, I feel like there's people that judge and have just and detract other people, but for the most part, I don't think there's people standing up going, "You didn't make it." To people who have worked hard to get to wherever they are, it doesn't really matter. I think there's a beauty in that, and contentment comes in that. We've talked about that, and it's not like I said, the family that decided to pick up and leave everything behind and have nothing and show up here in America and then achieve citizenship and maybe own a home, a very modest home, they've made it.
I think that
and nobody can tell them any different.
I think the irony comes down to,
and it's beautiful. That's beautiful.
You're looking for somebody to tell you you've made it, when ultimately you're the person who tells you made it.
Correct.
Like that's the whole. That's the, like I said, the ironic humor in life.
Yeah.
Like you're looking for somebody else to say you made it, when ultimately the person who says you're going to make it is you.
I think a lot of people look for somebody for validation, but
I mean, most people,
some
though,
people don't.
They'll strive, for certain things and want, you know what I mean, to like get that bigger house and do that stuff. It's kind of interesting because I think that, like, growing up, I remember like seeing well-to-do people, nice houses and stuff like that, and thinking like kind of jealous and like not despise them in a way. But what I think is really weird is that living here, obviously with Stryker and Pfizer and all the, Zoetis, all that stuff, that's here. Like, a lot of our friends are very well-to-do people, right? Between your neighborhood here in Trestle Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
You're good.
Whatever. But anyways, I mean, the neighborhoods we live in, our friends, like, what I've noticed, though, is that, like, even though all of, like, the close friends I have here are pretty well off, there's very few of them who would ever even consider letting people know that or rubbing it in. The only way you know that is because their house is nice and big. They don't, like, they're not, like, abrasive people who are, like
let's
pride. They're not, like, showing all this pride.
Let's be
they're not going, oh, my gosh,
let's be totally real about this situation here. Look, we have 3 people sitting at this table. 2 of them live in houses that are upwards of $500,000. One of them is not. Just pick who's who.
Who cares, though?
Exactly.
And we're all successful.
That's what I'm saying.
And we just love.
Coming from somebody, look, don't call this out, but for anybody listening to this, like, let's see if they can decide who's who. and see who wears fault. But when you look at us, you wouldn't be able to discern any difference between the 3 of us.
Yeah, right, exactly. I agree with that. Yeah, when we're sitting in that corner booth at LaRue's.
But I also wouldn't base
nobody
it on,
knows.
It's not based on income or anything like that. I guarantee you make way more money than I make. So
who knows?
I know. I'm saying we don't know that, but I would guess so.
I think ultimately that might be the best secret of this podcast is the.
We don't. Right.
We're all.
That doesn't matter to us.
There has not been one time like, you know what? I like Nick, but I really need to flush out his financials. Or I like Todd, but does he make enough money to be my friend?
You'd just see a bunch of
time,
debt.
ever.
You'd see a bunch of debt.
No one has ever said that.
Exactly.
Right? But there's enough. Hey, this is who I am. You guys can judge me on my character. I'm not gonna hold back on saying I want to go have a good time with you because we're not doing it on my boat or at my pool or at my thing. Look, every time it's like, let's go have a good time and let's cut up because what's mine is yours, and it's always whatever I have is amplified and is better if you're there.
So let's start to close this podcast out because it is getting late, but
I can go all night.
I could too.
I know, but tomorrow would be trash at work.
All right, fine. Never mind. We're not gonna close this out. But a couple things. One, you can also if you did take Tony's poll on who's who of homes and whatnot, you can also do the who's who on who has a pool and who does not, because one of us has a pool and 2 of us do not. So we can take that poll too.
Well, I think it would just be ridiculous if
we're joking. It's all jokes. I was making a joke, and so was he. But my point is exactly what he just said: is character, right? Yeah. People are drawn to character. People are drawn to something that is inherently right.
Sure.
People that make the right decisions. People that will be willing to stand on their own 2 feet and fail and go, well, it happened, and you know what? I'm gonna pick myself up and go. So surround yourself with those people. I think. What'd you say to Davis tonight? Tony said something to Davis. He said, look, you need to. He goes, because he's a younger guy, and he said, you need to be the person that says, oh, you like to hang out with me? You don't even know me. You need to meet my friends. And they're going to come in, and once you get to know them, all of a sudden you're going to get hugs from them, and you're going to be like, holy crap, what is going on here? And that's what people need.
Yeah.
They need to have conversations. They need to go out and have conversations with somebody that thinks differently than them. Draw an opinion. You can agree to disagree. That's cool. No big deal. Eat some pancakes. Pour some syrup on it. Like, life moves forward with those conversations. That's what's enlightening, and it's beautiful.
Like,
so
be a representative of an army of people that you can't wait to tell other people about. Yeah. When someone meets you and you're like, oh, you like me? I got an army of people that are just gonna light your world up. That are just gonna knock you on your ass. These are some amazing people. Like, I'm doing my best to show you just a small glimpse of the people that I covet in my life. And if you saw these people through the perspective I see them, like, you would go from being colorblind to living life in 4K. Like, there is so much value in the people that you conduct business with and consider your friends. Like, let me get out of your way. When I meet somebody, like, I almost have to stop myself from saying, let me tell you about my friend Nick. Let me tell you about my friend Todd. Like, let me get out of the way and let me show you what I feel like I got value in. When you look at Tony, you think, oh man, I like Tony. I'm nothing.
You know how many times I've described your beard to people or whatever? You got to see this beard.
Let me show you the things that, like, in the middle of the day, in the middle of a hurricane of my day to day, let me show you what puts a smile on my face. You know, let me show you these friends that I got. These are the people that have carried me, you know, who have stopped what they're doing and and come over to me and said, how can I help you? How can I make your life easier? Let me show you these loving people that I'm the culmination of. You know, I consider myself the spokesperson of the people that I connect with, right? And 10 times out of 10, I feel like I'm selling everyone short because I just can't come up with the words on what my friends make me feel like. And it's powerful. You know, Todd and I talked about this earlier. This idea, this feeling, when you have appropriately found yourself amongst people that are your peers, but your peers, let's say +1. When you've surrounded yourself around people that you strive to be, and you want to get to the tallest mountain that you can find, and you want to tell everyone about them, I don't know that you've found yourself in a better place in life. I mean, you're preaching to other people like, hey, I've put myself aside, and I've gone on a journey to find some people that are going to help you be a better person. And everyone who can hear my voice, come to me, and I'm going to show you these great people that I put all my chips with. And by all means, you don't have to like these people at all, but go find these type of people in your life, and I guarantee you'll be a better person for it. You know, all that other bullshit just dissolves away. Your hang-ups in life, shit that doesn't matter, all that goes out the window. Find yourself amongst friends that you can't wait to tell strangers about.
That's a good one.
And your life will be so great. You'll be so full. Your tank will always be full. Every trivial task, everything that you thought before was like, man, this was a terrible day, all that stuff means nothing, because you know you can reach back. You can go to the bullpen. You can call out the closer. You
can go hit some squats.
And that person is gonna be there for you.
Let's do it.
It frees you to be you. You don't have to carry around these chains and these weights of what your expectations are anymore, because guess what? You know friends and the people that you've confided in, they love you. With all your weird ass shit that you're all about, the strange hang-ups you have, the weird comments you make, all three of us have made just off the wall comments before, and we look at each other like, that's weird as shit, but I love you, and that's cool.
That's what people need to find, but it is, and that's great.
Just I don't want to like toot my own horn, but just something I'm prideful of, I guess. I don't want to say pride is a bad thing, but like Angie and I kind of laughed about this before or whatever, but for friends, especially, like the more inconvenient the ask is, the more likely I am to do it. Like, if you put me out and say, like, man, Nick, I really need you to drive 5 hours right now or whatever to pick me up, or you're the only one that can do this, like, it seems extreme. I go to Angie and I'm like, I got to do this. And she's like, are you kidding me? Like, no one else can do it? You can't come up with a better plan or whatever? And it's like, hey, they asked me, like, it's super inconvenient. I want to prove to them that, like, I will do the craziest thing.
Yeah,
like,
I'll be there.
And I'll be the one. I do that because I don't want to...
You can be counted on.
Exactly, but I know it's an opportunity to show that I'm like willing to go so far out here. Like there was a time when my boss wouldn't give me the day off at work when we were going on a camping trip or whatever, and I was like, well, I'll still pull the boat up. 4-hour drive in the Jeep, pulled the boat up, stayed and hung out for 2 hours, drove 4 hours back down, went back up after work the next night, had to come back and before the weekend. So I made like three round trips or whatever, but they needed me to pull the boat, and Angie's like, you're not doing that. I'm like, I said I would do it 2 weeks ago. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd be willing to say that.
There's not a lot of people that are built like you.
No, Angie's always like, she's like, you're an idiot.
That's part of.
I don't think that's an idiot. I mean, she feels that way.
Part of
probably.
your character, though, Nick. Like, that's one of. I gotta imagine that's one of the best characteristics that the people who know you and love you love about you.
For sure.
But I'd be
100%.
willing to say there's part of Nick that challenges himself. Like, hey, do I hold myself accountable? The standard I've constructed for me as a friend to anyone that knows me, I'm going to hold myself accountable because I'm going to do that for them.
But I also think there's some, like, in a weird roundabout way, like I said, I wasn't bragging. I just wanted you guys to know that if you have something super inconvenient, ask me and I'll help. And I'll help, sure. Right?
We got all kinds of furniture we're going to ask you to move next week.
But listen, one thing that I can say, though, that's on the opposite side of that, deep down, like, I'm stacking up goodwill. And in my head, it's like, I want to make sure I have enough that, like, if I kill somebody someday, like, you guys will remember all those inconveniences you made me.
We're gonna be there with shovels. We're gonna be there with shovels and lime and all kinds of stuff. We're gonna make you figure it out.
But you know what I'm saying, though? Like, so subconsciously, I think I do these things because, like,
you heard it here first.
We are so all going to jail together. If something goes down, they'll be like, "Hey, I heard it on podcast. You all said you were burying bodies."
I'm super.
You guys are talking about spaceships and burying bodies.
Very
You're
unlikely
all guilty
to ever harm anybody.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But no, I think that's a characteristic most people don't have. Is they're gonna be there. Hey, can you help me move? Yeah. Well, I'm moving to BFE, Alabama, and I need you to drive the truck there, and I need you to drive it back.
I'm moving to Mars, and I need you to put together a rocket.
Nick's like, Angie, I got to move this guy to Alabama. Most people are like, why don't you? I'll help pay you for a moving company.
No, we're driving, and we're using our trailer to move the shit.
Yeah, and we're doing it scoop by scoop, so it's gonna take about 12 trips. Nick's like, all right, let's do it.
But I'm also, like I said, very unlikely to, like, I try to do my best to not get help. You know what I mean? Like, so when
I was gonna say that. That's what I thought you almost said before you said you might kill somebody someday.
No, the reason I was saying,
I thought you might actually say on the opposite end of that, I'm not going to ask for help nearly as often because your threshold for getting something done is like, all right, it's a 500 task. Perfect. Most people aren't even taking on an 85 task. And you're like, oh, it's 500? Okay, cool.
And it's just a weird thing, I think. It's why, like I said, I want to stack up all these things. It's something, I almost think, like, it's a negative thing because the negative part of it is subconsciously I feel like I want maybe people to see me as better than them in terms of my givingness, right? And so like I'm thinking there's a negative to it and saying like I feel like I have something over you or other friends of yours because I've showed you that I will go, you know what I mean? And it's this like it is a prideful thing then, I guess. You know, it's
do you expect anything in
no,
return?
Zero.
Yeah, I knew the answer to that question before I asked it, but
I've done stupid things up in insulation and attics and stuff or whatever, and had like a buddy say like, "Hey, can I take you out to eat?" or you know whatever. Like if that's all you want to do, you know what I mean. But if they tried to hand me $100, I'm like, "No, I did this as a friend." Like,
Nick,
I'm just here.
Nick, prior to us thinking you're gonna murder the fuck out of somebody.
I would.
I get it. Like, I think that's one of the commonalities between the three of us. All three of us think, you know, let's figure it out. Look, we'll do it. We'll figure out where the chips lay some other time. Like, if you want to do something, I'll help you do it. How it all evens out and how we make sure everyone feels solvent about it, we'll figure that out later. That's a secondary equation here. The first equation is if you want to do something, I'm gonna help you do it. It might take all my resources. It might take half of Todd's resources. It might take 75% of Nick's resources. But if you want to do it, fuck it, we'll do it. And then at the end of the day, we'll make it all square between all of us.
I was gonna say when the first question is I need help, and then before you even know what it is, your answer is when and where.
Yeah.
I mean that's a pretty damn good quality.
I think that helps you sleep well at night. Like, hey, look, exactly. Look, I'm not gonna ask what it's gonna cost. I just want to know when do you need me, and how can I help. I think when you lead with that foot, I think the other part is trivial.
Sure.
We'll figure that out. Like we might have 15 minutes together as a group. We might have 15 years together as a group. Who knows? If these scores get settled before we cash our last day in, that doesn't matter. Did I help you do something you want to do? I think that is the ultimate weight. I think all of us can, throw our hats into that ring of, I'd rather help you succeed than figure out how we're all the same. We're all even here, right?
For sure.
The word I was thinking of was selfish. I couldn't think of selfish.
I
selfish.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm like 6 M43s deep. We've rounded the horn from
I think we're
aliens.
Good. We can end this. We were going to end it about 40 minutes ago, but
I'm super sore.
We're good.
This chair didn't help.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hey, let's
That's the next thing.
Let's benchmark this episode of the podcast of the start of the muscle hamster's journey of just getting swole.
Are you starting to lift again?
I did. I squatted last night.
This guy.
I did like a few sets, and I was like, I could already feel blood flow into my ass, and I was like, oh my God.
Let's not overlook the absolute mountain of muscle that Nick is.
No, there's no doubt about it. If he puts his...
Dude's a tank.
I'm losing weight, too, with I was walking.
If I got to hold you down and force feed you creatine, if I'm not sitting across the table from the Incredible Hulk a year from now, I'm going to be upset.
Hey, this fasting works. It took a minute for it to kick in, but not kick in, but from a weight loss, and that wasn't even whatever.
Should just feel better.
I feel great, but I'm also losing weight, and
I'm gaining weight.
I don't feel like I'm doing anything different.
But I
need to. Not that I don't want to get stronger, but it's cool.
Dude, my weight is directly correlated to how strong I feel. If I'm like, man, I'm gonna feel strong, I'm like, man, that scale's gonna be disappointing when I step on there. Like it's directly correlated. Like the amount of calories I've put onto this frame goes 1-to-1 on how much more I can lift.
For sure.
It's those unfiltered New England style.
It's all these.
That's right. It's
all this heavy beer we're drinking.
I'm 6 deep on these tall boys.
All right, so I don't
know what's going on.
Talk about incriminating.
So to wrap up the Saturday at 7 podcast, we may have landed on the moon. There are some shiny objects in the sky. Go see them. Tony's now a no on the moon. Character matters. Talk to people that you disagree with. And yeah, just have a good time.
And let's bookmark for next time. We'll start with some whatever.
Dude, I think
some health and lifting topics. That's where we kind of ended. We could go on about the gym now.
And we're easing into health and fitness. So yeah,
some people aren't gonna like this analogy, but I really feel like we need to go like elbow deep into like figuring out aliens and conspiracy. I love it.
We'll keep going. Well, we got to pick a topic. We bounce around, which is part of our beauty, actually. I don't even know why I say that.
I'm listening to Lex Friedman right now, and he's talking to this guy about singularity, so we can talk about that, too.
I've gotten a couple different feedbacks of this podcast, and some people say, I love random conversations, right? Because, like, look.
Sure.
That's what we should have named it.
Content aside, like, we're going to be all over the place, but let's say the probes that I've thrown out to see, like, just to get input from other people. Like, if somebody was like, well, you should do this. For the record,
I would love Tony.
If somebody, like, if I ask for somebody's comment on how this podcast is going, if they say anything like Todd should talk less, I'll be like, go fuck yourself. That's not the comment I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is constructive criticism. I'm looking for, you guys should have warm-up music. You should have something behind you.
Although that is good. That is good feedback. But
if you insult, if you're like, hey, Nick should, I'm gonna stop you right there. Go fuck yourself. Like, I don't want to hear it.
So let's
what comes out of Nick's mouth, what comes out of Todd's mouth, what comes out of Tony's mouth, that is not up for discussion.
Here's the deal.
The three of us,
probably you put a comment on in anything, YouTube, Facebook,
say it with your
Spotify.
chest.
You could just go fuck yourself.
What if someone says,
if you're such a big man, put it in the comments.
Well, that's from Tony, not from Todd. Not from Todd and Nick.
We're
nice.
What I'm trying to get to here is, if somebody has some constructive criticism to say about
criticism, new word.
If somebody's got something to say about this podcast,
it's time to end this.
Put it in the comments. Otherwise, I don't want to fucking hear it because this is perfect how it is.
It's time to end it.
If you want to put something around it, that's why I'm talking fast. I'm trying to wrap it up.
The comment's gonna be about Tony saying the same thing 5 times, like. And they're like, did you guys challenge him to say the same thing?
The comment's going to be, 5 times? Hey, do you know you could have a 10-minute podcast if you would told Tony to write down what he was
Todd had
about.
resting bitch face for like 20 minutes.
He's like, you already said that, dude. What is your point?
Hey, man, you talked me... You talked me into a vocal loop here. We talked about this for 36 times.
Did I just rewind? What's going on here? This thing is still going. Tony's still talking. 15 seconds. 15 seconds. 15 seconds. 15 seconds. Still Tony.
I've never felt so loved and insulted at the same time.
It's a big hug, baby. It's a big hug. All right.
It was fun.
We're out of here. Let's go.
Right on.